Good day, everyone. Today we are going to discuss lesson 4.3, and this is about simple annuity. We have tackled about simple interest, about compound interest, and today here's another lesson under basic business mathematics. We call it annuity. Specifically, today we will have the simple annuity. Let us start by reciting today's memory verse, and it's found in Psalm 37, verse 21. It says, "The wicked borrows but does not pay back, but the righteous is generous and gives." For your MVSA boosters today, you need to do Christian business lesson number 3. You need to reflect on today's memory verse and write your own version for Christian business lesson number 3. So, what lesson can we take from today's memory verse? At the end of today's class, we'll be able to illustrate general and simple annuity, distinguish between simple and general annuities, find the future value and the present value of simple annuity, and calculate the fair market value of a cash flow stream that includes an annuity. And here's our venture activity. It's about the loaned house, part 1. And here's the dialogue. There is a house for sale. I like to buy that house, but it cost 5 million and I only have 1,500,000. Maybe I could get a loan. Then that person went to the bank. What are the terms if I loaned 3.5 million? We have 4% compounded annually to be paid in 10 years. If that would be the terms, calculate if the loan was paid after 10 years, how much did she pay every year for 10 years? You need to make an estimate. And you see, after 10 years, that person is done with the loan payment. Let us start by defining some terms in annuity. Now, what is annuity? If we say annuity, it's a series of equal cash payments. Take note of our keywords for annuity. There is an equal cash payment, and there is a regular interval. It means there is a periodic payment over a predefined period of time. For example, if you'll go and avail of the Globe postpaid plan, you need to pay $999 when? That's every month. That's a regular interval for 2 years. You see, the 3 criteria would fit. There's the equal cash payment, the $999. There is the regular interval, the every month, and we also have the period of time, 2 years. With these 3 present, we call this an annuity. Now, what is an annuity payment or periodic payment? This is the fixed payment that you are giving. Example, you pay $999 for Globe every month. That $999 is called periodic payment. Next, how often do you pay? The gap between the first and the next payment is called payment interval. This time, I think you have commonly heard about paluwagan. Like for example, ice cream paluwagan. How often do we pay? Every 15 days. So that 15 days is what we call payment interval, or we call it bi-monthly. Or paluwagan, you need to pay every month. So that month is called the payment interval. Next, term of annuity. How long are you going to pay? Example, in the Globe story, you need to pay for 2 years. That is called the term of annuity. Or for example, if you have a paluwagan, you need to pay for 6 months. The 6 months, the gap between your first and your last payment is called the term of annuity. The next, annuity certain. If you say annuity certain, there is a definite duration. For example, we pay our globe bill for 2 years. There is a duration. Or if you have a car loan, you have to pay that for 5 years. There is a definite duration. There is an end to your payments. We call that an annuity certain. But for example, if you say annuity uncertain, there is no definite duration. It means that it is indefinite. As long as you live, you keep on paying. Example, health insurance says you need to pay every month until you live. That is what an example for annuity uncertain. There is an indefinite duration. Basically, there are two types of annuity. The first is the simple annuity, and the second is the general annuity. In the simple annuity, the compounding period is equal to the payment interval. Example, if the loan is compounded monthly and you pay every month. Or another, the loan is compounded semi-annually and you pay twice a year. So they are just equal. If these two are equal, we call it a simple annuity. For general annuity, the compounding period is not equal or not the same as the payment interval. For example, your loan is compounded monthly, but you will pay once a year. Monthly, annually, they are not the same. Therefore, it's called a general annuity. Second, your loan is compounded semi-annually, twice a year, and you pay monthly, 12 times a year. They are not the same. So we call it a general annuity. Next, we have also two other types of annuities. We have the ordinary annuity and the annuity due. If you say ordinary annuity, you give the payment at the end of each month. For example, we have car loans and then we pay at the end of the month. Or another one, you are having a paluwagan and the paluwagan is paid at the 30th of the month. So that is under ordinary annuity. But if the payment is given at the beginning of the interval, we call it annuity due. For example, house rent. And then before you leave, you say, ma'am, 1 month advance. Or they say, ma'am, pay at the start of the month. That is what we call annuity due. Or another, if you have a paluwagan, but then your paluwagan will say, instead of paying at the end on 30th, you need to pay every first day of the month. That is under annuity due. Again, if payment is made at the end, that's an ordinary annuity. But if the payment is given at the beginning, we call it annuity due. Next, deferred annuity. A deferred annuity happens when there is a delay. That's the term. There is a delay of the first payment. For example, you went to Yamaha and then you are given a motorcycle and you'll pay it for 3 years. But then you did not pay for 1 year. You pay at the start of the second year. Because there is a delay in the first payment, we call this annuity a deferred annuity. The last type is the perpetuities. A perpetuity is a series of periodic payments that seem to run infinitely or forever. Example, insurances, PhilHealth, SSS. These would look like perpetuities since they will run infinitely forever, or it looks like you're paying for a lifetime. Now, here's a flow chart for that. Again, for the annuity, there are two types. If there is an end, that's annuity certain. If there is no end, we call it annuity uncertain. Then for under annuity certain, there are two types, simple and general. Simple annuity is when the compounding period is the same as the payment interval. But if the compounding period is not the same as the payment interval, we call it general annuity. Under simple annuity, it can be a simple ordinary annuity. It means that the compounding period is the same as the payment interval. And in simple ordinary annuity, the payment is done at the end of the payment interval. But for simple annuity due, the payment is given at the beginning of the payment interval. For deferred annuity, there is a delay on the first payment. For general annuities, the compounding period is not the same as the payment interval. If you say general ordinary annuity, the payment is given at the end of the payment interval. But if you say general annuity due, the payment is done at the beginning of the payment interval. The last is perpetuities. It's a payment that's seen to be giving for a long period of time, or it looks like you're paying forever. Now, here are some questions before you will have the annuity. The first question, is the compounding period equal to the payment interval? If yes, it's a simple annuity. If no, it's a general annuity. And second question, when is the payment made? At the start or at the end? If it's at the start, you say it's an annuity due. But if the payment is given in the end, it is an ordinary annuity. You combine your answers for the first and the second, you have the name of the type of annuity. For example, in example number 1, we need to determine the type of annuity. Example, remember our first question, simple or general? Our next question, ordinary or annuity due? This is end, this is beginning. This simple is equal, the general is not equal. Example, number 1, payments are made at the end of each month for a loan that charges 1.05 interest compounded quarterly. See, when is the payment made? Monthly. What is the compounding period? Quarterly. 4 times a year, 12 times a year for the payment. They are not equal. So it is a general annuity. But the next question, when is the payment made? At the end of each month. So end, we have the general, ordinary annuity. That is the first one. Next, the rent for the apartment is 7,000 due at the beginning of each month. Beginning, so it is an annuity due. The payment is monthly, 12 times a year. Interest is compounded monthly, 12 times a year. They are the same. So we call this a simple annuity due. Next, letter C. Luke opens a special deposit account with a bank offering 6% per annum, compounded monthly, compounding period 12. He saves 15,000 at the end of each month. The compounding is monthly. The payment is monthly. They are the same. So it's simple. Next, at the end of each month. So it's a simple, ordinary annuity. Next, letter D. Mario invested 1,250 at the start of every 3 months. Start, so it's an annuity due of every 3 months. So how many 3 months are there in 1 year? There are 4, right? This is every quarter. For 10 years, at an account that earns a 10% interest compounded quarterly. The payment and the compounding period are the same. So we call it a simple annuity due. Next, letter E. An annuity contract provides for the payment of 1,200 pesos at the end, and so ordinary annuity of 6 months. So 2 times a year, right? Semi-annual for 8 years. If money is worth 7% compounded semi-annually, twice a year. Therefore, our compounding period and our payment period are the same. So we call it a simple ordinary annuity. Again, 2 basic questions. First, is the compounding period the same as the payment interval? If yes, simple annuity. If no, general annuity. And when is the payment made? At the start, annuity due. In the end, ordinary annuity. This ends the first part of this lesson.